There's just so much.
You're listening to a Mamamia podcast.
Mamamia acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this podcast on, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures.
Hello and welcome to Cancelled, a podcast that knows that life is suffering and all of this is hell. Jesse, that's my Jordan Peterson impersonation.
Yeah.
I'm Claire
Chaos.
Chaos, malevolence.
An impression is only funny if you know the original.
Yeah.
And hopefully we have some
Just
original
watch a video of
audio
him
throughout
on YouTube.
this.
Otherwise,
Do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Claire Stevens. I'm an editor and writer and hate listener of things I don't agree with. Who are you?
I'm Jessie Stevens. I have been known on my other podcast, Mamamia Out Loud, to defend Jordan Peterson and some of his views. I like his depression. I find it relatable. And he, talks about how bad the world is, which I think is a vibe.
I do think it's a vibe. So, spoiler, today on the show we are talking about Jordan Peterson.
How much responsibility do you feel that you have, particularly guys at the alt-right, who, as you say, some of them have enjoyed your work and say,
No,
I'm not
they
one
haven't.
I'm not one of you guys. I'm not with you guys.
They haven't enjoyed my work.
I've definitely read bits on the internet.
Read more.
Jordan B. Peterson?
Jordan.
Do we know what that stands for?
I did look it up. Oh my gosh.
Okay, I'm going to look it up and I'm going to
Surely,
make you guess.
Brian.
And because we're talking about Jordan B. Peterson, who is in the same world as Joe Rogan, I'm going to make all listeners wait while I press go on my Google search. Okay.
Bryant.
Okay, this is just so Jordan Peterson. Burnt.
Burnt.
B-E-R-N-T. At first I was like, oh, Brent. But it's burnt, which is very Canadian.
It's very Canadian. Jordan
Burnt Peterson. Okay.
Jordan Burnt Peterson is a 59-year-old Canadian academic, author and clinical psychologist who has become a prominent public intellectual. He was a very good academic psychologist who did a lot of research into personality. So he's heavily cited.
And he was a clinical psychologist for a lot of years, which meant he did a lot of face-to-face. Like he often talks about what he heard from clients, which I actually find very interesting.
Yes. He rose to fame in 2016 around the time the Parliament of Canada passed a bill adding gender identity and gender orientation to the Canadian Human Rights Act. So the bill made it illegal to deny someone a job or discriminate against them in the workplace based on the gender they identify with or outwardly express. Peterson posted a lecture online saying he would refuse to use gender-neutral pronouns if requested by a non-binary student, and that some of the things that I say in my lectures now might be illegal. He said, if they fine me, I won't pay it. If they put me in jail, I'll go on a hunger strike. I'm not doing this. And that's that. I'm not using the words that other people require me to use.
He's obsessed with communist Russia.
Yes.
And I think that's what this is about. Basically, anything that's going to suppress his freedom of speech, he starts to panic. He starts panicking, which is just interesting because I don't think he ever personally experienced Soviet Russia.
No.
But in his voice,
The
he's
vibe
like,
he gets.
oh, it was the darkest time in all of history.
Yeah.
You want to know how many people the Chinese, under communism, like he gets very, very panicked, and you can hear it there because you go, Jordan Burnt? Why is this a hill we're dying on?
It's very, very odd.
He panicked unnecessarily, and that was embarrassing.
He did, and it's very familiar given what's happened recently in Australia, in our politics. But unsurprisingly, Peterson was entirely mischaracterising the bill. At the time, Brenda Kosman, a professor of law at the University of Toronto, said, I don't think there's any legal expert that would say that misusing pronouns would meet the threshold for hate speech in Canada. She also said, I don't understand why he's talking about going to jail, because being in violation of a human rights code is different to being in violation of the criminal code. So if he was guilty of hate speech, he would have done something illegal, but he would not be a criminal. So he wouldn't go to jail. No one's ever, it's like the Sex Discrimination Act. You don't go to jail. That's not what it's about.
Yeah, right.
You might have to pay a fine or correct your behaviour or do some training. But just for context, the bill passed and Jordan Peterson, to my knowledge, is not in jail. Anyway, that's how we meet Jordan Peterson. And then he realises how much attention and fame he's got from creating mass hysteria. And boom, he writes a best-selling book, does a world tour, builds a huge YouTube channel, and so on. Before we begin, Jessie...
60-year-old man discovers he's great at YouTube is just not a thing that happens often.
I know. And he's ridden that wave.
And then he got big on Quora.
He did by giving life advice. And what a niche. What a niche. Before we begin, though, Jess, I'm naming you Andrew. And you're a Jordan Peterson fan. You...
Make my bed in the morning.
Make your bed in the morning.
I
You
iron my suit.
wear a suit to his live shows.
I am white. I have a university education. I have been given everything, and I think everyone else ought to pull their socks up.
Yeah.
So if you are a disabled person of colour who's finding life hard, may I suggest you make your bed?
And being better.
Yes.
Generally.
Yes, exactly.
So, Andrew, tell me what about Jordan Peterson appeals to you so much?
I think if you look back through history, not enough attention has been given to white men. And the white man has been forgotten, you'll notice, and in fact, discriminated against.
Actively.
Actively. So what I like about Jordan Peterson is that he speaks to me. He makes me feel seen and heard. But also what he does is he brings ethics and philosophy and academia into the mainstream. He's very compelling. And I think, as Andrew and also as Jessie, that he at times can fill a gap that has been left by religion. So religion helped us understand the world and our place in it very much. And then that moved on and we haven't filled it with anything. He talks about meaning. When I've gone and seen him speak for critical reasons, but also just because I'm curious as to his phenomenon, I have found that he talks a lot about the meaning of life, and I don't think people are getting that anywhere else.
I think it is a higher ordered discussion than what we're having with all our consumption of social media and celebrity bullshit, I say, while hosting this podcast. But I do think that there's something in that. And Andrew / Jessie, you've been to a couple of Jordan Peterson live events, as have I, for research purposes. This is what I noticed. Jordan seems very distressed and traumatised by the world. He gets emotional.
Do you remember? No, you went at this one, the one that I went to. He speaks off the cuff and I was like, oh, I'm so impressed. And
He
then
speaks for over an hour with no notes.
No. But then at one stage, he needed to check something on his laptop, which was on the stage. And he silently got his password wrong, like 4 times and couldn't get in. And I was like, just wait. It was the most white man thing. It was like, hold on. Chaos. No.
Malevolence.
Malevolence. No. Religion. No. Religion 101. Yes. And so he finally got it, but everyone waited while he opened his own.
Of course. My structure for today's episode is as follows. Number 1, problematic views. Number 2, 12 rules for life. Number 3, being a downer. And number 4, beef-only diet. Okay?
Otherwise known as meat sweats.
As always, this has been guided by my energy and generally what I find funny. You might say, but Claire, he doesn't believe in climate change. Why didn't you mention that? I just did. I think he is wrong. There's not that many jokes in it. Okay, problematic views. This is obviously a man who's really into creating mass hysteria over basic human rights, like by definition. So I'm going to recap some other problematic views he has. I'm not going to go super into it. On abortion, he says abortion is clearly wrong. You wouldn't recommend that someone that you love have one.
Okay. I must say, I struggle with Jordan Peterson's views on women. It is something that
It's a blind spot.
It's a blind
It
spot.
is.
He's not sure about women. He's
suspicious.
Yeah.
And
he does not like the gender pay gap.
no, well, he says that it exists. It just doesn't
Matter.
No, it just isn't for the reasons you think.
Yeah, it kind of like makes sense.
It's women's personalities and job choices that make them be paid less than men.
Yeah.
The annoying thing about him, though, is that he'll never just straight up say something controversial. He then tempers it with it's the academic in him, so that you can't really, in good faith, just give a soundbite and say that that's what he's saying. But when you really boil down to it, he's like, the question of whether abortion is right or wrong is the wrong question to be asking. How did somebody get into that position? And he has really conservative views around sex and marriage. And he genuinely believes that getting married is a good answer to an unwanted pregnancy. He genuinely believes that.
Yeah, and I think he thinks it's a lot about men and responsibility. not having as many single-parent families and all this kind of stuff, which again speaks to when he goes, he's speaking to Andrew, he's saying, you stick around, Andrew.
Yeah, you do better.
Yeah.
He endorses enforced monogamy and genuinely thinks that violent men can be cured by the love of a good woman through enforced monogamy. He spoke about this in relation to the Canadian man who used a rental van to kill 10 people and badly injured 16 others on a sidewalk in Toronto in 2018. And Peterson said he was angry at God because women were rejecting him. The cure for that is enforced monogamy.
I also don't agree on that.
I want the evidence, first of all, because I want to know what experiment you conducted where it was ethical to force women to be with violent men. But secondly, maybe the reason the men are single is because they're violent and women don't want to be with it. The man killed 10 people. So if you
I love it when like incels do that. They're like, no woman wants to be with me. I'm going to kill 50 of them. And it's like, that's why. They could smell it.
He seems to believe that men run the world simply because they're better at it. He says the people who hold that our culture is an oppressive patriarchy, they don't want to admit that the current hierarchy might be predicated on competence. Now, Jessie, I have a little soundbite that I want to play.
This is America, Lois. Men have always run things, and there have never been any problems whatsoever. And don't say the economy or Iraq or income inequality or racism or Brett Kavanaugh or air pollution or Vietnam or slavery or Watergate or capitalism or Me Too or homelessness or police brutality or homophobia or Monica Lewinsky or school shootings or Native American genocide or Fox News or Tim Allen or climate change.
The thing I love most about Family Guy is that every time you think they're going to stop with the joke, it keeps going.
Like the chicken.
Like Peter and the chicken. And it just keeps going and you're like, surely they must stop now. As always, Peter Griffin, nailing it. This is the moment at which I no longer can. So let's move on to his 12 Rules for Life. Jordan Peterson published 12 Rules for Life in 2018 and it has sold over 5 million copies worldwide. That was in 2020, so it could be far more now. It was and continues to be hugely popular with young men.
Unreadable.
And unreadable because it is convoluted and there are weird analogies about lobsters.
He is not a very good writer. It depends on how you define good writing, but in terms of being readable, he struggles.
He does. In it, he argues that it is better to seek meaning than happiness, which I profoundly agree with, and that suffering is built into the structure of being and we must face it and transcend it.
I love suffering. Suffering's his brand.
Yeah. He's like, we all suffer. I suffer from physical ailments, mental ailments,
Coma in Russia.
Spiritual ailments. He's just always suffering. But I like rules and I like numbers. So these are the rules. Andrew, I'd like your feedback.
Okay.
Number 1, stand up straight with your shoulders back.
Got it.
Number 2, treat yourself like you are someone you are responsible for helping.
This is starting to sound very much like
a Quora post.
For anyone who doesn't know what Quora is
It's like a more sanitized version of Reddit.
It's a forum. Yeah. Like Reddit, where Jordan Peterson got famous and then posted all his weird rules for life, which he definitely did at like midnight one night quickly. And then they were like, oh, you want a book deal? And he was like, I hadn't really thought about them.
And now they seem rather banal. Number 3, make friends with people who want the best for you. I've just got in my notes, no shit. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. It's like a bad Tumblr quote.
Yeah, I agree.
And a bad Instagram quote. Do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them.
That's my favourite of all the rules.
Really?
I think so.
Why? But I think children are
because
annoying.
He goes into it and he says, it's your job to tell your kid they're annoying. If your kid's annoying, which we know lots of annoying kids, who else is going to tell them? It's like the kindest thing you can do to someone is go, it's annoying when you put on that voice.
Yeah, because then they're going to go into the world and have other people judge them for it.
Don't talk about dragons so much. It makes you unlikable. You're 17, stop dressing like Elsa. That type thing, okay?
Just some friendly advice.
Yeah.
Set your house in perfect order before you criticise the world. This annoys me because it's just a paraphrased version of the quote, those who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. But it's like slightly more confusing.
He read that. You know how it, like when you're in year 2, you're given a sentence and then you have to paraphrase it so you stop copywriting? That's what he did. He like looked for a synonym of each of those words and he ended up with like, don't throw sticks in muddy igloos or something.
Yes. Don't throw things when you yourself are not it. Mate. Pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. I think that this should probably be the guiding principle of our times.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we're all pursuing what's expedient and it's going to end terribly.
It has ended terribly.
Tell the truth or at least don't lie.
Yeah.
That's why he's got to tell the truth about women. You're not running the world because men do it better.
Yeah.
Hence why everything is perfect. Assume that the person you are listening to might know something you don't.
This is my least favourite because no one I have ever come across does this worse than Jordan Peterson.
I know. He's so arrogant.
He can't listen to people. He will sit in an interview and like speak over them and not ask questions. Every woman he speaks to, he's like, this is an opportunity to educate.
Yeah. You're so dumb.
You're so dumb. Your feminism is so embarrassing. And he's like, I will explain to you. No one he speaks to does he give an opportunity to learn something off them.
I don't think he would ever listen to a feminist speak and actually listen. Be precise in your speech. Like when you say you're going to get arrested, but you're just being hysterical. For example, then. Now, these are a bit more interesting because what happens when you write a list of any kind is that you say,
we know this.
The 7 reasons this movie was bad. And you get to 5 and you go, why did I make it 7?
Sometimes you get to 3. And what I often do is I go, the 7 reasons why this movie was bad. And then I eventually change it to the 4 reasons.
Yeah.
Because it turns out I didn't have the other reasons and it's easier to change the headline than change my copy to meet my headline. The problem was his cover had been made.
Yeah, 12
it had been
was
designed.
the number.
12 was what he had sold. There is something about the number 12, I'm pretty sure.
That's quite clicky.
The 2 digits.
Yeah.
So apparently if you want to write a best-selling book, then you're meant to put numbers, rules, and then preferably diet. But he didn't put diet, he put life.
Okay. Because his 2 last rules are pretty bad. Do not bother children when they are skateboarding.
Too specific. Too specific.
Do you want to explain this or shall I?
I think you should.
He makes the point that skateboarding is a way for children to test danger and learn to deal with risk and pain and is therefore important to socialisation and mental health. Basically, this one is about not coddling kids, but it's just confusing because the rest have been really common sense and straightforward, and now you're going for like a metaphor.
Too niche, yeah.
It's really strange. The final one is pet a cat when you encounter one on the street.
Yeah, that's when things got really dire. That's when he ran out. And you know that what he was doing, this is what happened. He wrote his 11, deadline's coming. It's tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay? And it was 9 p.m. the night before, and Jordan went, I got to finish my book, and I've only written 11 rules. So he went for a walk around the street, and he saw someone patting a cat. And he went, pet a cat. That's the last rule.
The interesting thing about this is, right, I don't think you should pat a cat when you see one on the street. I think you'll get bitten.
A lot of cats don't want to be patted. And definitely don't pat a dog.
Well, because one time our brother, Nick, we were at the shops and he saw a dog shivering in the rain and he went over to pat it and it bit him. We had to go to hospital.
Had to get a shot. And we said, would you pat that dog again? He said, yes. Any dog I see, I will pat it.
He's a good boy.
He was a good boy.
But the thing about cats, I'm pretty sure if they bite you, there's like more of an infection vibe.
I try to pat cats and they run away.
I think this is bad advice. I don't remember the last time I was able to pat a cat on the street.
Is this about mindfulness or something, living in the moment?
Yeah, so it's about paying attention to the small things in life and noticing the good.
Allergic. We have a cousin who's very allergic. He gets very, very wet eyes.
I just think this is, again, he's seen like Stop and Smell the Roses. And he's gone, pet a cat when you encounter one on the street. Not the same, more confusing, more specific, more risks. How many people are going to come to him with a lawsuit when they get attacked by a cat? Or I thought that raccoon was a cat. In 2021, Peterson then released 12 more rules for life. I think it's because he went, I told people to pat the cats. Things went badly. I better have some new rules.
I think he made a lot of money off the first book.
Yeah.
And he went,
I can think of more rules.
Let's do the same thing.
Let's double down.
Let's flog the dead horse.
They got more boring. So notice that opportunity lurks where responsibility has been abdicated.
I don't know what that means.
Okay, well, for me, it's the areas of my life where I refuse to take any responsibility is where if I did, there would be some opportunities there. But instead, I
go down a Jordan Peterson rabbit hole.
That's so
Obvious?
Yeah.
Work as hard as you possibly can on at least one thing and see what happens.
Oh, I like that one.
I like that.
I
I
like
like
a
it
lot.
because
Yeah.
it's good advice, but you just, the cat.
Yeah, the cat still.
Really?
You can't do any of these things if you're in hospital with a cat bite.
Moving on to being a downer.
If you're wasting 20 hours a week, you're wasting $50,000 a year. And you are doing that right now. And it's because you're young, wasting $50,000 a year is a way bigger catastrophe than it would be for me to waste it, because I'm not going to last nearly as long. And so if your life isn't everything it could be, you could ask yourself, well, what would happen if you just stopped wasting the opportunities that are in front of you?
He is very burdened by the suffering. He's really dramatic. When we saw him speak, he was all about chaos and things being terrible and malevolence and pain and suffering. And Jessie, I'm just going to read some quotes in Jordan Peterson's voice. To suffer terribly and to know yourself as the cause, that is hell.
So sad.
Mate, cheer the fuck up. The purpose of life, as far as I can tell, is to find a mode of being that's so meaningful that the fact that life is suffering is no longer relevant.
But then again, he's just paraphrasing Viktor Frankl.
No, he really is.
Viktor Frankl says something about the key to life is like, if you find a why, you can endure anyhow.
Yeah, that's better.
That's something like that.
Being is suffering tainted by malevolence. So what's the meaning? There's pain to alleviate. There's chaos to confront. There's order to establish. And there's evil to consume.
Where is the evil?
What are you seeing in your dreams? What are you seeing when you close your eyes? He's got bad things happening in his soul. It's really, really odd. Finally, his beef-only diet. My favourite thing. In 2018, an article was published in The Atlantic that did a very comprehensive story about Jordan B. Peterson's beef-only diet. It starts with his daughter, Michaela Peterson. In 2015, she started eliminating things from her diet and she felt better each time. She was diagnosed with
She has an autoimmune disease.
Yes,
Yeah.
when she was a kid.
Like, genuinely, she's had a lot of health issues, I think.
And so by December 2017, all that was left in her diet was beef, salt and water. And all her symptoms went into remission. She quit all her medications. Interestingly, she can still tolerate vodka and bourbon, which I find really interesting. By 2018, she was selling one-on-one counselling for people who wanted to stop eating almost everything. Her Insta bio said, for info on treating weight loss, depression, but like you can't treat
She was
weight
doing
loss.
heaps of bikini shots and so was her mother.
Yeah. So for info on treating weight loss, depression, and autoimmune disorders with diet, check out my blog or Facebook page. Then her blog said many, if not most, health problems are treatable with diet alone. By the way, she has no qualifications in this. I want to know why she needs a whole blog for it and you can get consultations with her when it's such a simple diet. Because what are you going to ask?
Yeah.
How? Oh, well, you just only eat beef and salt.
But what do
and
I eat
water.
for breakfast?
Beef. And then
Can you give me a meal plan for lunch, though?
beef.
And how about dinner?
Also beef.
How about an afternoon snack?
Some strips of beef. And it's like, what if I'm hungry? You won't be because you won't want to eat any more beef. like I don't understand what the questions could be. The author of this article for The Atlantic spoke to medical professionals just to make sure he wasn't missing anything because he's like, wait.
I don't want to misrepresent this, but it sounds like a meat-only diet.
I've always thought that vegetables are important.
Yeah, we're it.
So just checking that that's the case. And they did get probably the first doctor he contacted who described it as physiologically a terrible, terrible idea and said of Michaela, if she does not die of colon cancer or some other severe cardiometabolic disease, the life ... I can't imagine.
The colon disease thing is interesting because
Yeah.
whenever I hear about the beef-only diet, all I can think about is the toilet experience. And by that I mean I feel as though they would be chronically constipated.
I feel like your poos would be quite dark. and dense.
And heavy.
And heavy.
They'd sink.
And heavy. They'd sink. They'd sink. Because there are some things that are really good for like
Fibre.
Where's the fibre?
Sorry,
like
you're
I'm
only eating
seeing
beef.
Jordan Peterson on the toilet pooing out a completely intact piece of steak while meat's sweating, and he stinks. They say you smell like the food you eat.
He smells like a cow.
He smells like an uncooked piece of meat.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't think it's great. And so that year, in 2018, Jordan Peterson tells Joe Rogan that he's on the same diet as Michaela.
Here's a question. Why is everyone fat and stupid? That's a question, man. Because it's new.
Is it?
Yes, it is. It's new. And it's not sedentary lifestyle. That hypothesis doesn't seem to hold water. There's something wrong with the way we're eating. What's wrong is that we're eating way too many carbohydrates, I think. But remember, I'm no expert.
Big shift.
He was very careful in that interview to say,
I'm not a medical professional.
I'm not a medical professional, but let me tell you about my meat-only diet.
Well, why did he talk about it? Why did he talk about it on the podcast?
Because apparently it's changed his life.
He said that his lifelong depression, anxiety, gastric reflux, inability to wake up in the morning, psoriasis, gingivitis, floaters in his right eye, numbness on the sides of his legs, and problems with mood regulation were all gone, and he attributed it to the diet. But he did have a negative story. And Jessie, I think you'll remember this because we laughed at the time. He and Michaela accidentally had some apple cider. I don't know how you accidentally have apple cider, but they were incapacitated for a month by what he believes was an inflammatory response. And so Joe Rogan's like, oh my God, like what happened?
A month. Didn't he say I didn't sleep for a month?
Yep.
I didn't sleep that month. I didn't sleep for 25 days.
How is that possible? That
I'll tell you how it's possible. You lay in bed, frozen in something approximating terror for 8 hours, and then you get up.
Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah.
He said it produced an overwhelming sense of impending doom. I seriously mean overwhelming. There's no way I could have lived like that. But see, Michaela knew by then that it would probably only last a month. Why and how did Michaela know this? Like, she's not a medical professional. She doesn't know shit.
This is what I love is how Jordan Peterson was like, it's really fixed my mood disorders. And I was like, really? You seem really depressed and troubled.
Just for the record, the longest recorded stretch of sleeplessness in a human is 11 days, witnessed by a Stanford research team. You can't not sleep for 25 days, you die. So what has happened to Jordan Peterson is that, he hasn't slept well for 25 days. I accept that. Sometimes you think you haven't slept, but you have.
Oh, Mum used to tell us that as kids. It's so annoying.
And that,
when you haven't slept and your mum's like, oh, I'm sure you did. You just were dreaming.
You just forgot.
You just forgot that you did sleep for 8 hours. No, you're gaslighting me. Well, I didn't sleep.
Jordan Peterson did sleep in those 25 days. And that's
unless
the
he broke
problem.
the record. That's the thing about records is they do get broken.
Not by more than double by a man who's claiming it on a podcast. This is the problem with having a sample size of one. Is that
no one was watching him.
It's just really strange.
Jessie, what's your charge and sentence? Charge. His diet does not have enough variety. For example, I don't think he eats enough vegetables. In that, he does not eat vegetables, such as spinach.
He only eats beef.
Yes. He must also get thirsty for other drinks that aren't water.
He says that he does sometimes have club soda. And Joe Rogan was like, yeah, but that's still water. And he's like, no, when your diet's so restricted, it matters if it's bubbly water. It's like, far out.
Well, I think that his charge is the lack of variety. And he should have more colour on his plate.
Yeah, lack of dietary.
Everything he eats is brown.
Nan would be horrified.
Yes, she would not like that. Where's your potatoes?
Yeah.
My sentence is that his next book ought to be a cookbook. And because we know that Jordan Peterson makes a rod for his own back in deciding the number of rules before he has decided on what those rules may be, I think he should write 101 ways to make Jordan Peterson's diet. And the problem is, it's only one piece of meat. And so it's in strips. He'll get to like 3 because it's like tartare.
God, he can't have any sauce.
Oh.
He can't have any sauce. It's just beef and
okay,
salt.
so it's like on the barbecue.
It's like a steak. And then it's like
jerky.
I was gonna say a steak sandwich. Can't have that.
So I think he'll get to point number 3 and he'll be like,
really struggling.
Yeah.
He'd have to get creative. I'm picturing, you know, when you go and see the crocodiles in Darwin and they put a piece of meat on the stick.
Yeah.
He's got to do that. He's like,
Yeah. That's a really
jumps
good
for
one.
the stick.
That's a really good one. Yeah, look, other than a piece of steak on a barbecue, I can't really think of many other ways to do it. Can you bake beef?
I think you could try.
Okay. You could lather it in salt and water, for example.
And raw. You could have it raw.
I think he has some raw meat. That's why he stinks. And it's not eating raw meat that makes you stink, to be clear. It's eating raw meat for breakfast, lunch and dinner and snack that makes you smell like wet meat.
I don't like it.
I don't like it. Okay, what's your charge?
Some silly ideas. Do you agree?
Particularly regarding women.
Yes. My sentence. He gets bitten by a cat. He's on the street and he goes, better follow my own rules. There's a cat, I'll pat it.
Yep.
He goes to pat the cat.
Yep.
It bites him on the hand. He goes to hospital.
Yeah.
The problem is that Michaela says you can treat anything with diet alone. So he goes to hospital and he says, don't give me a needle, tetanus, for this weird cat
Just
disease.
slap a piece of beef on it.
Just give me
You know
some
what?
beef.
You know what he thinks? Strip of beef, Band-Aid over the top. And it'll help heal the wound.
And I just want him to become sicker and sicker until he realises I think there is a place for modern medicine, specifically when I have instructed people to pat feral cats.
Yeah.
And there are health consequences to that. So I think that's what he does. And I also want him, when I think about him eating only beef, I think that dogs and cats would be jealous.
Because that's what he'd smell like. Can you imagine if he walked past a lion?
Oh.
A lion would be like, you just smell yummy.
You
The
smell
sharks would love him.
Mm-hmm. I just think he's eating dinner and his dog's like, smells like what I want for dinner.
Yeah, agree.
Jessie, that is all we've got time for on today's episode of Cancelled. If you want to have a look at the evidence, we have some memes that we'll be putting in.
Some tweets, some TikToks, that kind of thing.
Yep, some TikToks, him saying things like chaos and
Yeah.
hell. Then they will all be on our Instagram at @thetwins_thoughts.
This podcast was produced by Rose Kerr and the head of podcasts is Eliza Ratliff. We will be back next week. Bye.
Hi there, I'm Claire Murphy. How many times have you seen someone lash out at an umpire? Or maybe you've done it yourself.
Get back in the kitchen, you stupid Why don't you let your husband do it for you? That's ridiculous, you stupid You on your period, love. Show us your tits.
Listen to our daily news podcast, The Quickie, to find out how these words impact female umpires from local to professional leagues and what other abuse is going on behind the scenes of your favourite sport. Join us for The Quickie in your favourite podcast app today.
I'm Jessie Stevens, and if you want more Mamamia in your life, become a Mamamia subscriber. For as little as $5.75 a month, you'll get unlimited access to our articles, videos, and podcasts. Plus, you'll be helping to fund girls in school in some of the most disadvantaged countries in the world through our partnership with Room to Read. To find out more, check the show notes.